Some breaking news coming from the Middle East as the Islamic Republic of Iran have now rejected the ceasefire extension that was...
Central Iran, 60 kilometers from Isfahan, late in the night, U.S. military surveillance assets were tracking movement around a major IRGC command network, while hundreds of Iranian forces stayed on high alert around hardened compounds, radar sites, and command bunkers. What was at stake was not only control of one headquarters, but the risk of a wider regional war within the next few hours. After Iran rejected the ceasefire extension, the entire situation changed fast. What had looked like a short pause now appeared to be over. Diplomats stopped using calm language. Military officers moved from warning plans to active response plans. Regional bases went on alert. Air defense operators stayed at their screens. Command posts checked fuel, ammunition, and communications links again and again. In Tehran, officials signaled they would not accept added pressure under threat. In Washington, military planners treated the rejection as a sign that the next phase could begin at any time. The IRGC headquarters mattered because it was more than one building. It was a control point tied to communications, logistics, and response coordination. Iranian forces believed the site could survive a sudden strike because it sat under layers of security. Outer checkpoints watched the roads, inner compounds controlled access, reinforced buildings reduced blast damage, mobile air defense teams stayed nearby. Backup power systems and alternate command rooms gave the site a second life even if one section was hit. Iranian forces believed that even if pressure increased, the headquarters would still function long enough to direct a response. That belief shaped the next hours. The U.S. response plan was built around speed, confusion, and pressure from more than one direction at once. One element would suppress radar and air defense coverage. One element would isolate access roads and cut reinforcement routes. One element would target communications links. One element would focus on the command center itself. The goal was simple: overload the defenders before they could understand what mattered most. The first sign that the ceasefire rejection had changed everything came just after midnight. Aircraft already in the region shifted position. Support crews on distant bases moved faster. Naval forces adjusted readiness. Intelligence teams watched for missile movement, convoy movement, and emergency command traffic. Iranian forces did the same. Anti-aircraft teams checked firing arcs. Vehicle crews stayed inside their trucks. Officers moved between bunkers with updated orders. Nobody on either side expected a normal night. At 12:40 in the morning, the first phase began. It did not start with a public statement. It started with disruption. Electronic pressure hit surveillance channels. Communications links slowed. Some radar pictures became less reliable. Iranian crews saw signals, then gaps, then false returns. In a crisis, even seconds matter. Those seconds were enough to create doubt. Iranian forces now had to decide which warning was real and which one was noise. That delay was costly. 2 minutes later, precision strikes followed. Not a random barrage, not a citywide attack, a tight sequence against systems tied to response speed. A radar position went dark. A relay point stopped transmitting. A vehicle staging zone was struck and blocked by fire and debris. The purpose was not just damage, the purpose was to break timing. Once timing breaks, defense breaks with it. At 12:44, Iranian forces inside the headquarters zone understood they were under coordinated pressure. Searchlights activated, barrier gates closed, security teams moved to fighting positions, pickup trucks with heavy weapons tried to reposition between internal roads. Some units stayed near the outer perimeter, others pulled inward to protect the command section. That created the first major problem for the defenders. They did not know whether the main threat was outside the fence, above them, or already moving toward the center. 6 minutes into the crisis, the first outer positions were effectively isolated. Access roads to the compound became dangerous to cross. Vehicles that tried to move were exposed to surveillance and strike risk. Iranian forces still had numbers, but their movement was now restricted. A large defense can become weaker than a small defense when it cannot shift force quickly. By 1250, U.S. pressure had moved into the next phase. Surveillance, strike coordination, and isolation worked together. Iranian forces reacted with urgency. Machine gun teams took position on rooftops. Anti-aircraft crews searched for targets. Quick response groups attempted to move through covered routes between buildings. But every movement came with risk. Every radio call could be tracked. Every vehicle that left cover could be seen. 10 minutes after the first disruptions, the fight had become a race between command and collapse. At 12:52, Iranian commanders attempted to re-establish control using backup communications. Orders were sent to seal internal routes and protect the hardened command rooms. That decision made sense on paper. In practice, it narrowed the defense. More men moved inward. More focus went to the headquarters core. Outer sections now had less flexibility. Once the center becomes everything, the attacker knows where pressure will matter most. At 12:55, another wave hit. Communications nodes near the main command section were targeted again. Backup systems were forced to carry more traffic. Security teams inside the site now had to rely on runners, short-range radios, and fragmented reports. One post reported fire on the north side, another reported movement near the vehicle yard, another claimed a strike had destroyed a control room. Not every report was accurate. That was part of the problem. Confusion creates its own damage. 15 minutes into the operation, Iranian forces still held the compound, but they were losing the ability to understand it. That is often the turning point in any fast military action. A force can survive explosions. It struggles to survive blindness. Outside the central buildings, Iranian defenders with AK-74 rifles, PKM machine guns, RPG-7 launchers, and DSHK heavy guns tried to build fixed resistance points. Some positions held for a short time, some did not. Exposed locations faced direct pressure. Routes that looked safe 5 minutes earlier no longer were. The defenders were fighting hard, but they were fighting in pieces. At 1:02, the command zone came under focused pressure. Power interruptions hit sections of the site. Emergency lights switched on. Doors sealed in some corridors. Security teams moved through smoke and dust to protect entrances, stairwells, and bunker access points. The headquarters still existed. It was still defended, but it was no longer operating with confidence. That mattered more than appearances from the outside. At 1:05, attempts to bring reinforcements from nearby positions began to fail. Roads were watched. Staging points were exposed. Vehicles that tried to approach had to stop, turn back, or take cover. Iranian forces inside the compound now faced the hardest part of the night. Help was expected, but help was delayed. In that gap, pressure kept building. 25 minutes into the operation, the outer idea of the headquarters as a protected fortress had already been broken. The walls still stood. Some bunkers still held. Some defenders still had ammunition and strong positions. But the claim that the site could absorb the first blow and continue normal control was finished. The first blow had done more than damage structures. It had broken rhythm, speed, and confidence. At 1:10, the battle shifted again. The focus moved from broad disruption to internal paralysis. Communications rooms, generator links, access control points, and protected movement corridors all came under renewed pressure. Iranian forces now had to decide what to save first. The command staff, the signal systems, the air defense section, the vehicle park, the stored weapons. In crisis, too many critical assets become a weakness. You cannot save everything at once. By 1:14, fires were visible in more than one section of the site. Emergency crews tried to move, but the area remained unstable. Ammunition stored near security points raised further risk. Some defenders stayed on their posts. Others shifted position when walls cracked, ceilings dropped debris, or secondary blasts hit nearby rooms. Iranian forces were not absent from the fight, they were resisting, but each minute reduced their ability to resist in a coordinated way. At 1:18, command traffic reportedly became fragmented enough that some local units acted on partial orders. One team moved to reinforce a gate that no longer mattered. Another stayed in place waiting for instructions that did not come. Another tried to guard a sector already cut off from the main fight. This is what happens when a defended site loses a clear picture of itself. Men may still fight bravely, but bravery cannot replace structure. 35 minutes after the first phase started, the core objective was close to failure. The headquarters had not vanished, it had been disconnected. That distinction is important. In high-pressure operations, the system can die before the building does. Once communications fall apart, once movement is blocked, once backup routes are no longer safe, the headquarters becomes a shell around isolated groups. At 1:22, Iranian air defense teams attempted a stronger response from surrounding sectors, but the timing was late and the picture remained unclear. Signals had been disrupted. Radar confidence was reduced. Operators faced a hard choice between firing, relocating, or waiting for better confirmation. Delay favored the attacker. Every extra minute helped the pressure campaign tighten around the command zone. At 1:25, fighting around the central section reached its peak. Doors were sealed and then forced. Corridors were blocked and then bypassed. Security teams tried to hold stairwells and bunker entries. Some did. Some were pushed back by repeated blasts, smoke, and loss of communication. The defenders had local courage, but not local advantage anymore. Positions that looked strong became traps once exits were cut or the next room went dark. 40 minutes into the operation, the battle was no longer about whether the headquarters would function normally. By sunrise, it would not. The only remaining question was what could still be saved before the site stopped serving its military purpose. Iranian forces continued to resist around protected rooms and internal security zones, yet the larger pattern was set. The site had taken layered pressure, failed to restore command flow, and lost the initiative. At 1:30, the central command area was effectively compromised. Critical rooms were no longer secure. Sensitive equipment was either disabled, damaged, or at risk of capture. Data systems were interrupted. Backup power suffered repeated failure. Reports from different sectors no longer matched. Some officers were cut off. Some security teams had no clear route to reposition. The headquarters still had men with weapons. It no longer had dependable control. By 1:36, the final defensive effort centered on preserving whatever could be moved out fast. That was difficult. Internal routes were blocked, vehicles were limited, time was gone. The defenders now faced the result they had built the site to prevent. A headquarters designed to stay alive under pressure was losing function faster than expected. At 1:42, the objective was effectively seized. Not in the sense of parade footage or dramatic slogans, but in the military sense that matters. The command hub had stopped serving its purpose. Core communications were broken. Key spaces were no longer secure. Iranian forces in the area were either pinned, withdrawing in fragments, or trying to hold isolated rooms without a wider plan. Equipment linked to command and response had been destroyed or disabled. The headquarters was no longer directing anything. At 1:48, mop-up actions continued around surviving resistance points. Small groups of Iranian forces remained active in pockets near service buildings, covered corridors, and fortified entrances. Some kept firing from fixed positions. Some attempted late withdrawal. Some surrendered when routes failed and support did not arrive. Fires continued in multiple sections. Secondary explosions raised more uncertainty about stored ammunition and fuel. 55 minutes into the operation, The difference between holding ground and controlling a battle had become final. Iranian reinforcements were still trying to approach from outside sectors, but they were too late to reverse the outcome inside the compound. They could increase danger. They could not restore what had already been lost. By 2 o'clock in the morning, the withdrawal phase began. Pressure shifted from seizure to exit. The site had been disabled. The main purpose was complete. Remaining risks now came from delayed reinforcement, random fire, and wider retaliation from outside the immediate area. Iranian units moving toward the compound found blocked approaches, damaged staging points, and broken communications. Some arrived close enough to see smoke and fires. By then, the command center they expected to save was already out of action. At 2:12, the battlefield picture was clearer. The headquarters had been rendered ineffective in less than 90 minutes. Nearby sectors were still dangerous. Air defense threats still existed. Reinforcement traffic still moved in the region, but the core mission outcome had already been decided. A site built to project control had lost control of itself. Final assessments in the hours that followed pointed to a severe operational loss for Iranian forces. The headquarters complex suffered major structural damage across command, signal, and security sections. Communications equipment, vehicles, and support systems were destroyed or disabled. Estimated facility and equipment damage reached $280 million. Iranian forces suffered 74 killed, 118 wounded, and 63 captured across the headquarters zone and connected security sectors. U.S. military losses were reported as 3 killed and 11 wounded during the broader operation. For Iran, the deeper loss was not only men or money, it was the collapse of a protected command site at the very moment it was needed most. Iran believed the headquarters could absorb pressure, hold command, and guide a response long enough to change the fight. What actually happened was faster, harsher, and far more damaging to the chain of control. Sometimes the strongest defense is not enough when U.S. forces decide it needs to be taken.